there are people who shouldn't be in customer service because of their personalities. And if you have those people in those jobs, then they're definitely not going to do it the way you want them to do it.
Like when you go into a shop or a store, some and many of them are doing great, but some of them you notice that you are a hindrance to whatever kind of day that staff is having.
And I don't necessarily feel like people are disciplined when these complaints are made. There's a lot of big and
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So people don't necessarily understand the impact of their actions. You have this typical bonus alone we did. No. I refuse to accept.
Welcome to Honestly Speaking, a podcast where we have honest conversations about real issues shaping our lives and the world around us. My name is Antonia Howard and I'm your host. Today we're talking about something I'm sure you have experienced, customer service. If you've ever walked into a store, a shop, or any office in Sierra Leone, you may have experienced the blank stares or slow responses, or just that feeling that your presence there is an inconvenience rather than an opportunity for business. So the question I'm asking today is bad customer service in Sierra Leone a reflection of our deeper cultural attitudes? Is first of all, is there a problem with customer service in Sierra Leone? So to help me unpack this subject today, I have with me in the studio Edleen Elba. She's an HR and business consultant, and she has spent several years working with companies to improve leadership, workplace culture, and service delivery. She understands what great service looks like and has insights into why businesses in Sierra Leone may struggle to get it right. So welcome, Edleen. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's go straight into what it is we're talking about today. First of all, what's your personal experience? When you think about customer service in Sierra Leone, how would you describe it?
Okay, so I'd probably categorize it by, I guess, the type of service, or not necessarily the type of service, the sector as well, right? So firstly, public service, I think, provides the worst service. So if you're lucky, you may have a nice person who by nature would assist you because that's how they are. But for the most part, generally, when you go for public service, it's like you're bothering them.
Yeah.
And then you have the larger organizations, or probably medium, where you don't necessarily interact with the owner. So your restaurants, your banks, what have you, they also have major issues. And I guess you rely on the staff to do whatever it is that you've told them to do, or, implement whatever your values are.
Yeah.
And depending again on who it is and what their mood is and what have you, they may or may not do that. And then you have the smaller businesses and individuals who seem to be making more of an effort. So for example, even at the market, you have your market women who embrace their customers and, they have relationships with their customers. They will even come to the house to deliver if, that's what you want. And the small businesses as well, especially you meet them on Instagram or WhatsApp, and they're more receptive to giving good service. So those are the three categories really that I would use, and I've had good and bad experiences in all.
Let's start with like public service, like let's say any office or agency in Sierra Leone. Take for example, let's say EDSA, or even banks. You walk into a bank and you start asking questions, and you're just met with this. It's like your questions are bothering the very person who is meant to answer those questions. It's like they're just offended by you daring to ask questions about something probably you don't understand or something that has happened with a service that you signed up for or something. So what would you say is the issue there?
So I find that it's a combination of things. One is upbringing. People are raised differently in across the country. And I find that the values that we grew up with from the home, most people don't have. And it's becoming less and less as we go along. The things they're supposed to be learning in school, even some of the teachers were not raised in that way, so they cannot pass on those values as well. So however they've been treated growing up, what have you,
Right.
is basically how they're going to treat customers when they get to the workplace. And that is what we're seeing now. The other thing I find is Sierra Leoneans are traumatized. There's this deep-rooted issue, whether it's from the war, whether it was before and we hadn't noticed it because we were children, whatever it is, there's something going on with us. And we tend to, first of all, there's this thing where people don't feel like there's dignity in what they're doing, right? There's also a lack of respect for self, for others, what have you. And people are also tired, sad, depressed, whatever it is.
There's a lot going on.
There is a lot. And it's coming out in the workplace. And if it's not your business and your livelihood, the tendency for you to make more of an effort is very low. Because why?
Yeah.
They're also upset at work. So maybe the work environment is not conducive for whatever reason. I remember when, I used to work in a particular bank and I wasn't happy the whole time. Obviously, because of who I am, I wouldn't take it out on the customers. But I understood why some of my colleagues treated the customers the way they did, because they felt like the management was being unfair to them.
Right.
And if they're being unfair to them, then that's the only way they know how to.
They also have to be unfair to someone.
Absolutely.
I've actually thought about this before. At some point in time, and not that many years ago, I used to think, and I still do think, there is so much anger here. And for many, very, very many different reasons. Now you make you go see people then they drive for small things. Like there's so much road rage. People then go make plaba over. And when you find out what the issue was, you say, now this thing they make plaba for, because people are so angry. And there's just, maybe there's a lack of work ethic. We could go into that maybe some other time or maybe sometime later on in this conversation. But do businesses actually value customer service? Do they invest? What do you think? Do you think businesses invest in training their customer service staff and that's just not working? The staff then just think, yes, we'll do the training. But at the end of the day, if I have a problem at home, the customer, we can't see that problem in my face.
So I'll give you an example and then that might answer the question. I stayed at a hotel that had just opened and I had a guest. And the lady brought the guest up to my room. So she knocked and I opened the door and it was her and the guest standing there. I'm like, oh, okay. So I was like, oh, I'll come down and meet you, what have you and what. And afterwards, I went up to her and I said, why did you bring that man to my room? And she said the phone wasn't working. I said, so if the phone isn't working, what do you do? She says, I tell him to wait. And then I go upstairs to you and tell you that there's someone here. So I'm like, so if you know what to do, how do I get you to do it? Like, why didn't you do it
in the first place?
That's the point. So there's a lot of training being done, a lot of training. These banks that we complain about, the telcos we complain about, they train constantly. The telcos will listen to conversations. They would, I mean, there's so much going on. But somehow, some way, it's just not translating into good customer service. There's also a lack of information being passed on to staff. So I'll give you an example again. If, for example, a policy changes in the bank, they don't necessarily tell the staff. So it's when and they don't tell us, the customers, either.
Right.
So it's when you send someone to the bank, that's when they will say, oh, they need to take this one again. Oh.
This one, you
Now,
don't stop. Oh,
yes.
this system, maybe don't pull.
Right. And for you, that's really bad customer service. But for the staff, it was like, I genuinely did not know.
And there's a disconnect there because they don't see it as a problem telling you, the customer, that they didn't know.
Right. And that is because, one, their upbringing is different, and two, they don't know how to communicate. And honestly, as we go along now, we're realizing more and more how bad the communication issue is. And there are things that you're going to have to put in your training that you didn't even imagine.
Yes.
Because, I mean, how are you supposed to imagine that somebody would do that until they do it?
Right. I had a very terrible experience recently, and I went on a rant on Facebook because it wasn't the first time.
Oh, I saw
and
that.
I had simply had it. Like, I'm not being getting away again. Like, I'm not that was the first time I went on Facebook and did that because I was so upset. And it wasn't because of the service itself. It wasn't because the app didn't work or this and that. It was just because of the way they handled it,
Yes.
just because of the way they communicated. I'm like, how do you talk to a customer like that? And even if they're not saying the right things, there's the way you say it. There's a way you say it where I understand, like, okay, this person understands what I'm going through. They just don't understand or know what's going on. But the way how then they're talking on the phone and it's just so nonchalant.
Yes.
It's like, no, I can't. I cannot put up with this. So I went on Facebook and Instagram and I just laid bare what was going on. But then it got me thinking about whether it is us, the customers, we the customers, are we the ones not demanding better? Or we where they demand better, we know boku. We who see this as an issue, we're not that loud. You know, we're not complaining every now and then. We're not making it a real issue for these offices or banks or what have you to deal with this issue.
I think that is part of it as well. Very rarely would people give feedback. And sometimes we end up giving the feedback when we're frustrated. So it comes across like really bad in the end.
Yes.
But I personally always give feedback. I make it a point. If it's really good, I will say that, you know, this person served me really well. If it's really bad, I will definitely say that, you know, this is what it is. And I don't necessarily feel like people are disciplined when these complaints are made. There's a lot of big and
absolutely.
You know, that kind of stuff. So people don't necessarily understand the impact of their actions. And I feel like that is what is missing at the moment, that people don't necessarily understand how whatever it is that they've done affects the individual,
right,
as well as the business that they work for.
Exactly.
And that is where I feel probably owners and employers, you know, managing directors, what have you, need to make more of an effort.
I had that experience in this experience. First in the time, I say, oh no, if I put the post on, if one part we bust and see and then go sack that person there. And I can understand that, okay, yes, it's serious. But someone deserves a consequence for failing to do their job. That went on for 48 hours. I not get lights na me os for over 24 hours. If me not been posting where they sell cool water, that's business gone. That And I don't even need for cell cold water. There's something I do with electricity at home. There's a consequence for me not having electricity. And not to like say lights not been day. Lights been day. I just didn't have EDSA top up because I paid through a bank app and the payment didn't work out how it should work out. So the big, I can understand, and perhaps that's why this continues. That's why maybe customer service staff feel like they can get away with any kind of behavior. But the other question I want to ask you is there a reason why? Because we know that some offices, some businesses do train their staff. Is there a reason why inherently some people just don't take to the training? What would you say if you were to give a diagnosis? What would you say about that?
So just as you have people who by nature are a certain way, there are people who shouldn't be in customer service because of their personalities. And if you have those people in those jobs, then they're definitely not going to do it the way you want them to do it. There's a lot of training that's being done. There are lots of focus groups. I feel we should do a bit more focus groups, actually, have more discussions about effects, do more, emotional intelligence training, things like that, so people understand the power of their words and actions and, all of that, which I feel they don't.
Yeah.
But also how to manage your own emotions and your own stresses, because everybody is going through something. And even the person that you may be giving bad customer service, that might just be the final one for that person.
It could be that the person is just having a damn terrible day. And then he call customer service and last straw.
You're having a bad day. Now you've made someone cry or something. So really, people need to have more conversations about how they treat others, and this one I feel like it's more of a civic engagement thing. It's actually one of the reasons why I started the Elba Foundation, because those are some of the things that we'll be doing, having more conversations around how we treat people and respect for others and all of that, and just consequences of your actions, really, because I don't think people think about this enough. There are people who don't necessarily care, and to be honest, I don't know what to do with those. But the people who actually do care, but haven't thought about it, they've just said what they've said and what have you, then those people you could probably get on board. But also, I feel like employers need to recruit people properly.
I was just going to ask about that when you mentioned Elba Group and the work you do in HR. I wanted to ask, what mistakes do you think businesses are making that could potentially impact or influence their customer service?
Yeah, so one is definitely recruitment. They probably are not doing it properly and ending up with the wrong people in some of these roles. So maybe personality tests, what have you, they need to do to find out if they have the right people coming into some of these roles. That's definitely one. I think we've touched on a couple as well. Again, it's how you treat the staff that would most likely reflect on how the staff treats your customers. So, they need to engage their staff from time to time, find out what the issues are, and try to solve as many of those issues as possible.
Yeah.
And it's not always money, sometimes it's money, but it's not always money. I mean, the other day I went into this supermarket that's just done their renovations and what have you, and I was teasing them. I said, "Hey, when our office don't find now, eh?" They're like, "Yes," kind of thing. And one of them said, "He go finally the money back." I said, "But not all the money." He said, "No, not school, not school." He said, "The office don't find." So if you have a good environment and you feel like you're being treated well and what have you, then it makes you happier, and you're also able to, pass that on to your customers.
I also think there's one of the gaps missing in terms of what the training content for businesses, their staff could be, is that whole concept that you exist because of the customer. Like when you go into a shop or a store, some and many of them are doing great, but some of them you notice that you are a hindrance to whatever kind of day that staff is having. So how do we teach people to value customers more, teach businesses to value customers more?
So I feel we're all guilty of this particular one, where we don't share enough of the finances. They don't see how their behavior directly impacts the business. So if you're selling more, you're assuming that people are happy, people are coming more, and what have you. If you're losing customers, why are you losing customers? Again, businesses are not necessarily doing surveys to find out, why things are happening. And if we were doing that, we'd be able to share with the staff for them to see that our customers are not happy with us. This is what they're saying. And because of that, we're losing money, right? So you're still getting your salary, but if this continues, then we won't be able to keep you on, kind of thing. So I feel like we all need to do a bit more of that, collect the data, and it's a lot. I mean, depending on the kind of business that you run, you probably don't have time for that. But it's important for you to be able to do it, for you to get that data and share it with them, so they just see, everything that's going on with the business and what role they play. And also, it's very important to involve our staff in decision making. Let them feel like they're part of something as well. Most times when you feel like you're part of something, you don't want to spoil it. So you put more of an effort into making it work. But I find that a lot of times you have employers who just make all their decisions, do all their stuff, what have you, and they just want the staff to tag along, and and it doesn't necessarily make any difference to the staff. They're just going along, and they don't feel like they're part of anything. So maybe that's, something else that we need to look at.
And in terms of demanding better, how can we, the customers, the receiving end, demand better? I know you mentioned giving feedback is important, but what can we do in terms of constructive feedback? Because what you said is very important. Sometimes the feedback ends up coming out in a way, or it comes out when you're frustrated, really, and it's not necessarily constructive. So how do we do better as customers and demand better?
So again, not all of us would know what better looks like, which is part of the problem. Okay. People are used to people speaking to them in any way, and they don't necessarily feel like it's an issue or what have you. Take it. And, you have this typical thing that people always, even today, they said that to me. Bonus alone we did. No. I refuse to accept. I refuse to accept this. So I feel like even people who know better expect little because that's alone we did. And this is how people behave. So they don't necessarily give the feedback. And I feel like that attitude needs to change, that we need to demand a bit more from, our vendors, suppliers, service providers, what have you. Personally, I stop using their services. It's difficult with, like you said, the banks and the telcos, right?
Providers,
with those ones, what you need is a person, unfortunately.
There's many things in Sierra Leone,
right?
Unfortunately,
you need a person who's your person now who will do all these things for you. But if you're talking about like restaurants, for example, there are restaurants I don't go to because I, had a bad experience, and I don't feel that I should give you my money. There are people I wouldn't buy from because, I've had a bad experience and I wouldn't give you my money. And if people do more of that, then people will realize. And you make sure that you tell them that this is why.
This is why I'm not coming to your shop
I'm
anymore.
I'm not coming here anymore. So they need to just step up and make a bit more of an effort.
All right. So vision, maybe 2030, 2035. If we get this right, if we get our customer service right, and, people are doing what they're supposed to do, what do you envision business in Sierra Leone looking like in, let's say, 10, 15 years?
I think customer service is like a little tiny
It is.
bit
It is.
of
Of the problem, or of the things that we need to fix. Yes.
In terms of-
Accepted.
right? In terms of business in Sierra Leone.
Accepted.
So I'm not necessarily sure.
Well, talk about that small. That small sidey. Let's just say.
I'm not necessarily sure that it would make that much of a difference to the business community, but you'd probably have happier customers.
You have
floating
happier?
around. Happier customers floating around. I think more of an effort needs to be made also to make things more digital, right? Especially for those of us who complain and who say we don't have time and all of that. If we have more digital services, then that work, because yours was a digital service that did work.
Yes.
Digital services that work, then we wouldn't have to interact as much, and it would be easier for us to do business, with them.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close? Is there anything else you'd like to mention, or?
I would like to commend the small businesses that are making the effort. And I feel like if that grows, so your small businesses, your individuals, what have you, if people receive more of that, then that would be the expectation. And they would probably now learn to demand more from others. So that is the hope, really, that, when you experience love, you experience being cherished, you go somewhere else.
You raise your standards. You raise your standards.
Exactly. So if there's more of that, then definitely I feel that people would now start to demand more, and hopefully businesses would now start to give more, and hopefully
we'll have a better Sierra Leone. All right. Thank you so much, Edleen. Thank you for coming. No. Thank you for making the time to be on the podcast.
This was fun.
All right. And that's all we have time for today on Honestly Speaking. We have been recording at Black Lion Production Studios here in Freetown. Don't forget to like, share this conversation with your friends, your family, and continue the conversation online. Let me know what you think about customer service, what experience you've had, and perhaps what you recommend could make customer service better in Sierra Leone. My name is Antonia Howard, and this has been Honestly Speaking.
That's it for today's episode of Honestly Speaking. Thank you for listening and being a part of these important conversations. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, please like and share. And if you're feeling inspired, do leave a review. I'd love to hear what you think. And of course, carry on the conversation online. Share your thoughts, experiences, and ideas using #HonestlySpeakingSL. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay honest.